Since 10/7, there have been people who did not show up for our community.
I don't know how many people know this, but the Anti-Defamation League does not exist to protect Jewish people. And despite what they claim, they don't actually care about things like combating anti-Semitism. The truth is, they're an extension of Israeli intelligence operating in the United States to make sure we support Israel. Or else. And they've been doing it for over half a century. Don't believe me? Well, I got all the receipts.
I've always thought the Anti-Defamation League should just drop the anti and just call them what they are. It's a defamation league.
I recently sat down with James Bamford, a longtime investigative journalist and author who has written extensively about the National Security Agency and other intelligence organizations to uncover the disturbing ways in which the ADL has aligned themselves not to civil rights or the protection of Jewish people, but rather to state and other establishment powers.
For J. Parnell Thomas's Un-American Activities Committee comes Lachlan Curry, aide to President Roosevelt.
In the 1940s and 50s, the ADL collaborated with the House of Un-American Activities and the FBI to secretly monitor and report on individuals and organizations suspected of communist sympathies or activities. The ADL's monitoring of American citizens continued even after the McCarthy period, including surveillance on key figures of the Black Freedom Movement, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And unbeknownst to most Americans, even today, these kinds of hostile clandestine operations against Americans would continue in the coming years and decades as the ADL's focus on intelligence gathering and propaganda intensified, except this time on behalf of a certain foreign nation.
First elected Assembly of Israel opens in Jerusalem.
The ADL's coordination with the State of Israel has been documented as early as 1961 per an internal ADL document. Quote, "Our information, in addition to being essential for our own operations, has been of great value and service to both the United States State Department and the Israeli government." And according to Bamford's research, between 1967 and his retirement in 1997, Erwin Swall, the national director of the ADL, backed by millions of dollars from pro-Israeli sources, ran a nationwide network of agents and informants, launching a large-scale surveillance war against thousands of Americans. Key targets of the ADL included the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee, the most mainstream Arab American civil rights group at the time, along with other organizations and individuals who they believed to have expressed pro-Palestinian sympathies, and, shockingly, also groups and individuals organizing boycotts against apartheid South Africa. I say shocked, but then again, if you think about it, perhaps not so shocking given some of Israel's own domestic apartheid policies.
The investigation that was done by the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, among the data that came out was that they would spy on organizations that were critical of Israel, spy on organizations that were critical of South Africa, and they would pass that information on to Israel, and they passed the information on to South Africa. This was apartheid South Africa.
According to a declassified FBI document, one prominent investigator working on behalf of the ADL was Ray Bullock, a San Franciscan with the codename Cal, who posed as a small-time art dealer in the Castro district. Working clandestinely with Bullock was Thomas Girard, a detective with the San Francisco Police Department's intelligence unit and a 3-year veteran of the CIA. Bamford wrote that, quote, Girard would illegally supply Bullock with confidential data from the police and FBI computer files about Americans, many of them pro-Palestinian activists that were targets of the ADL. His reports were then submitted to the ADL's executive director in San Francisco, Richard Hirschot. Court documents ultimately exposed that Bullock and/or Hirschot admitted that the ADL or its agents gave information to the government of Israel and sold information to the government of South Africa, including information secretly collected from Jewish peace groups. Is that anti-Semitic?
America and Israel are rock solid together.
The vast majority of us stand with Israel.
With America's support, Israel will do what it needs to.
Israel.
Israel. Israel.
It begins and ends in Israel. A lot of the money are from pro-Israeli organizations. A lot of the information goes to Israel. A lot of the suggestions for influence comes from Israel. I mean, that's what the people on the inside were saying.
Their donor base cares about Israel, one former ADL staffer told Jewish Currents magazine. A former ADL lawyer also said, these donors have a huge amount of influence in some ways that are kind of bizarre. And that money and influence went far beyond just spying on individuals and groups critical of Israel, as the ADL has also worked closely with the FBI, including providing training programs for FBI agents and sponsoring specialized trips to Israel for senior officials to study, quote-unquote, counterterrorism tactics.
Our job is to build and foster long-term relationships. And the Israelis do an unbelievable amount in the realm of counterterrorism for us.
The ADL also conducts training programs for police officers, prosecutors, and judges. And to date, the ADL has trained over 150,000 law enforcement professionals in the United States. They also have the power to monitor social media activity across all major platforms and change social media algorithms the way they see fit. Don't believe me? Well, here's Jonathan Greenblatt, the CEO of the ADL.
We work with YouTube to get them to change their algorithms. We work with Facebook on trying to use a redirect method, so when you search for Holocaust, you get directed to like a Yad Vashem page. We opened a center in Silicon Valley back in 2017. And the woman who runs it, she's an ex-Facebook executive. I have software engineers and data scientists working at ADL. We're monitoring all this stuff, and we're working with all the platforms, by the way, Google and YouTube and Meta and Twitter and Reddit and Steam and Amazon, all these companies. From like Apple to Zoom, we work with all of them.
Some might call that a conspiracy fact. Just saying. And if their ability to influence big tech and media isn't disturbing enough, the ADL also partners with payment platforms like PayPal to monitor online transactions and cancel payment processing for those whose speech they disapprove of.
Just to understand this, is this simply a research effort, or is the ultimate goal, I imagine, to effectively defund them, which is to say that PayPal would effectively turn off the spigot, or at least turn off the ability for them to fundraise using PayPal?
That's correct, Andrew.
I've never seen any other organization come anywhere close to the ADL in terms of its secretiveness, its connections to foreign governments and passing on information to the foreign government, and the money that it receives, the amount of attention it receives on television constantly. Jonathan Greenblatt is constantly on television. There's no other organization anywhere near that comes anywhere close to the ADL in terms of influence.